not unlike Marx, whose family live-in made housemaid Lenchen, who was Marx got her pregnant behind his wife's back, and the child, he denied the existence of the child, refused to pay the child any money, even a penny of child support. But then again, they didn't pay Lenchen either. She was like an indentured servant to the Marx family. So much for the champion of the proletariat.
Can we wrap up by talking about less Marx's spiritual affiliations or lack thereof, and more his personal behavior? First of all, his hypocrisy regarding money, and secondly, how he treated his family and friends, especially in matters of money.
Yeah, the way he treated his family, I mean, he could not put a roof over their heads. The only way that they got a roof over their heads was from Marx's family's inheritance and the father. And then when the father died, and Marx didn't go to the father's funeral, some Marx biographers say that he couldn't or whatever, couldn't make it, and others say no, he did it out of spite. I don't know. I quote from both, but he seemed to love his father, although a very very difficult relationship with his father. After the father died, he went to the mother to try to bilk the mother for money. And he even writes some letters to his wife, Jenny, on basically how, well, at least I got one thing from the old hag. That's my life, right? At least I got an IOU that she would give me some more money. And at one point, the mother had to cut him off too, even though she knew that the money was keeping the Marx family alive. Tough love. Marx's mother, like his wife's, both expressed the wish that Karl would start earning some capital rather than just writing about capital. Then they went to Jenny's family, his wife's family. She would go off begging. I quote some of the notes from her. "Oh, Karl, stop. I am in such a state. The butcher is a terrifying man. He's coming after us. We owe him money. And he's not even as scary as the landlady who's going to bang the door down and throw us out." Meanwhile, he's drinking the money away, not earning anything. And they would have gone completely broke if it wasn't for Engels, actually, if it wasn't for Engels' capitalist father, which is where Engels got all the money. And Engels was Marx's top subsidizer, sap, and sugar daddy. He bailed out Marx at every turn. In fact, he even accepted paternity for Marx's illegitimate child when Marx denied that Marx was the father. They named the kid Freddie after Engels, and Engels did that in part to save Marx's marriage. Engels didn't believe in marriage, right? He and Marx both wrote against it, and Marx even wrote to Engels, "Blessed is he who has no family." And Marx would tell one of his son-in-laws, I think it was Paul, that I don't know why any fool would even want to get married, right? Of course, Marx didn't want Paul to marry his daughter because Marx was because Paul was part N-word, as Marx put it. So they, but yeah. So Engels didn't care about his reputation, right? It was fine with him if people thought that Freddie was his illegitimate child. Bah, who cares? Marriage? Ha ha! Who cares about marriage? Blessed is he who has no family, said Marx. So but it was Engels. It was his chief subsidizer, and the family, probably even at least one of the children, arguably died from Marx's refusal to really keep the family safe and warm. And Paul Johnson, the British historian who does not like Marx at all, and any Marxist historian or progressive, you cover your ears now, right? Johnson's a conservative. I don't want to hear what he has to say. Johnson said that Jenny's affections for Marx never recovered after the loss of that particular child, and she blamed him in part for the death because of the family's woeful financial situation. Marx wrote to Engels, "Not a day goes by that my wife doesn't wish that she was in her grave with the children, such is her misery." So he was a terrible family man. And Thomas, I've written on this a number of times in a number of Q&As, including at Catholic websites. And Catholics will go to the reader comments and say, "Why is this relevant? Why are we talking about the guy's personal life? Well, haven't you figured it out? Right? The private was public in Marx's case, right? It, what he advocated are extensions of all of this private behavior.
Right.
And in a nearly 500-page book, it's okay if it's a biography to talk about this for 12 pages, okay? And then if an interviewer asks you about it, that's okay too. All right. So take it easy, quit huffing and puffing. This stuff is relevant, right? In Marx's case, the private stuff is very relevant to his worldview and his philosophy and what he wanted for the world. Marx's ideal system, Thomas, would have been one where Marx could have lived the life that he lived, refusing to work, refusing to literally get his butt up off the couch, which is one of the reasons he had carbuncles all over his bottom all the time, where the rest of the world would subsidize him so he could criticize and shout abolition. That would have been Marx's ideal world. And in the kind of Marxist collectivist nanny state that he envisioned, that's probably what he was angling for. Although, frankly, the people that ran such a state probably would not have put up with Karl Marx.
Just to touch on what you just said there, it's kind of embarrassing that Catholics would say, "Well, how is that relevant?" I mean, this separation of philosophy from one's personal life is just a modern invention. I mean, philosophy means the love of wisdom. Yeah. The ancient philosophers considered philosophy to be a way of life. And also, we're not talking about a science that has no bearing on, that has no direct connection to morality, like, chemistry or something like that. Not that it could totally be discounted in terms of one's wider philosophy, but these things affect how we think, and it's a good thing for moderns that they've convinced people that one's personal life is irrelevant to the quality of one's philosophy, because just about any modern philosopher you look at, you can find problems with their personal life. Certainly.
Yeah, in fact, Paul Johnson's book Intellectuals was filled with examples like that, which is why he has one chapter on Marx that deals with all those things. And as a case in point of what I'm talking about, go to the Q&A that I did with Catholic World Report and look at the reader comments. It's stunning. And go to some of the reader comments in an op-ed piece I wrote for National Catholic Register, where one person says, "Oh, Kengor's quoting of Marx referring to the social principles of Christianity as cowardice, hypocritical, and everything else. This is out of context. He's talking about, Marx is actually talking about kings and whatever else." Yeah, but it's not out of context. He says what he says, and then he makes a categorical statement, right? The social principles of Christianity are base, they are cowardice, they are hypocritical. He doesn't stop and say, in this case, these people show that in some cases, individuals who are Christians can be whatever. I had a review, a national review, some of these same points, and I don't get it. When even people on our side fail to make kind of obvious connections on this stuff, I look at this and I say, wow, I see why we're losing. And let me give one more example. I have a section on Kate Millett in the book, and you haven't gotten there yet. Wait till you read this. You'll probably, when this interview is over, you'll probably go straight to that section. She was called the Mao Zedong of the women's movement by Time magazine. She was on the cover of Time. She wrote the book Sexual Politics. And I quote her sister Mallory at great length. And Mallory is now a very devout Catholic. And Mallory says that Kate was not only deeply disturbed and crazy, Mallory believes that Kate was possessed and has said so a bunch of times.
Right.
And in her case, she believes that Kate's philosophy and kind of miserable view and her thinking all grew out of not necessarily possession, but out of this kind of really dark, twisted worldview. She would say to me, Thomas, she'd say, if only people reading my sister's book knew what my sister was really like, they would not be taking her seriously. And I found in a number of things, a book needs to be written on this. Many of the people that are out there with ideas that some people follow, or that people even follow online or wherever, are not well. It's remarkable how people, if they only really knew the character and beliefs and the behavior of the people that they were signing up to follow their credo, their ideology, if they could only really see what they were like in real life, they'd say, why am I listening to this person? Right? And in our cases, me and you, I mean, we follow the teachings of Jesus. All right, not a fair comparison, right? Perfect human being, 100% God, 100% man. Well, we follow the words of the Blessed Mother. Okay, Catholics believe Immaculate Conception, not another perfect example. Okay, every night before I go to bed, I read about different saints, right? I draw inspiration from saints, St. Francis, Catherine of Siena, Faustina. When you read what these people were like and the sacrifices they made, those are inspiring examples who really practiced what they preached, lived out what their lives were really like. So this stuff matters. And when you read about Marx and you see the philosophy as indeed an extension of the private, then you will have no doubt that that it's very, very relevant and should not be dismissed.
Also, just to go back to what you mentioned before about people who dismiss the relevance of Marx's poems and plays and early writings as sort of juvenilia, aside from what you pointed out about the time frame in which they were written being not that far apart from some of his major canonical writings on communism, this is a kind of a pet peeve of mine. I think Catholics shouldn't believe in the idea of it's just a phase. What you do in your formative years, if not corrected, it forms you. That's why they're called your formative years. And
Amen.
that goes quadruple for anything involving the occult or magic or Satanism or anything like that. That stuff, unless specifically repudiated and healed, stays with you. It becomes part of you in some way. And people think that oh well, my sleeping around, that was just a phase. It's like, okay, you might have stopped doing that, but you didn't repent it, and that means, I'm willing to bet that means, whatever pathology was involved in that is now just manifesting itself in a different way than it was back then. So there's the kind of the truism about, when they're young, they are crazy with lust, and when they're older, they get greedy or whatever. But this is just terribly naive and stupid to think that these things don't have a significant relevance for one's later life. I mean, uh,
Well,
in this
that's
case,
right.
it's not even that far apart.
Right. I mean, I was a rotten piece of garbage. I mean, I wake up in the middle of the night sometimes and I think to myself, oh man, I can't believe I did that. Oh, I forgot about that. Right. I can't believe I said that. I can't believe I said those things. I can't believe those beliefs. I mean, I'm doing penance, on and on and on and on for things that I did and said, even into my college years. And, I've had people come up to me today and say, wow, what happened? How did you change so much? And it's like, well, I had a conversion. I became a Christian. Uh, and all the spiritual biographies I've done, Hillary Clinton, George W. Bush, Ronald Reagan, I spend 50, 60, 70 pages in those formative years. And by the way, no one ever says, well, why did you include the stuff from their youth in this case, right? So now they just do it when you include it on Marx and it's bad. Right? You're using this to discredit his beliefs. No, it's the elephant in the living room of his life and helps explain his beliefs and even how you go from A to B to C to D. So yeah, this stuff is very, very relevant.